Right, and back to our discussion today, and let me first welcome our distinguished, of course, guests of the day, Ambassador Nabil Badr, member of the Egyptian Council for Foreign Affairs. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Dr. Hassan Shaaban, Engineer Hassan Shaaban, of course, Vice President of the Al-Wafd Party. We thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me.
And starting with, of course, the very quick reaction taken by the, of course, the defense, our National Defense Council at once, the reaction by dawn.
I think it was quite necessary to take a step, like the step which has been adopted. The raid, of course, in itself is an action which Egypt tried to avoid before. But things have developed in such a way that it was a challenge which actually touched very seriously, not only on the dignity of the country, the dignity of the Egyptians, but the credibility of the Egyptian possession. And these factors had to be considered quite seriously, of course, under the circumstance. Naturally, we must expect the reactions, and some of them have shown up to this moment. Analysis of the rate, discussions or so-called discussions about the casualties and so on, different reactions that try to address the internal public opinion here in Egypt and world opinion as well, and some that are more in the direction of guesswork of what's coming next. What we need, what Egypt needs, as a matter of fact, is probably what we have started to do, not in the sense that strike after strike, but what I mean is regaining the credibility of the Egyptian potential to action, seriousness in protecting its citizens and its possession in the area and worldwide. And that is closely tied up with our look to the national strategy of fighting terrorism. If I take that and I try to analyze it, part of it, of course, is aligned with the international campaign against terrorism. Terrorism, as we know, is a danger to everybody. But we in particular live in this part of the world. And it so happened that our neighbors or neighboring countries have become focuses of intensive terrorist activities. And accordingly, we have really to pull efforts internally in the sense of course, keeping the people abreast to a multidimensional treatment of the situation. One concerns the internal public opinion, two, sharing of the public opinion in the decision and what's coming next, three, the cultural element as demonstrated in the religious address and how it should be directed. And in that respect in particular, let me think that Egypt has historically played an enlightening role in this part of the world. And the hope of many countries is that we regain this role as well. Let me say that even the layman, anyone might feel seriously that we have gone astray. We have been sort of dragged to misconceptions, to exaggeration, to very unhealthy practice that has nothing to do with the authentic, sincere mission of Islam itself. And that certainly should be revisited and revisited seriously. And in that sense, that needs a comprehensive work as well, in which, of course, there's a front not only of the intellectuals, thinkers, religious figures, a public opinion that is willing to share, but I would say it should go and widen its scope and its circle of effect and influence to the world around us. Let us sort of protect and address the Arab Islamic world and the world at large of that mission. Part of it, it's not just a matter of idealism or practicing or even at that juncture reclaiming land which has been lost because, well, the land has been occupied by wrong elements, but we think it is a part of the national strategy meant to protect this country, us, from within, in our beliefs, in our practices, in the way we demonstrate ourselves. That's number one. Two, in the way we can also influence decisions taken around us or taken on a wider scope concerning this part of the world. That, I think, is very important. Of course, if I go to Libya in particular, yes, okay.
Yes, well, of course, we have all the time for discussing the matter from every aspect. Engineer Shaaban, if we are speaking here, I'm not going to ask you about a description to the incident itself, because there's no description to a cowardice act. There is no description. But rather, I would ask you about the timing and the reason that they spoke about the whole incident.
I think what happened last night was an act to terrify the Egyptians and to show an example to everybody in this area what's going to happen if they do not comply with the Daesh requirements. I think what happened is a very cowardice act. Our young people showed great courage in facing death, and it actually did like a cementation to all the Egyptians together. We are getting all of us together to face this threat that our brothers in Libya faced. A matter of fact, I would like to add that the Libyans themselves are subject to this sort of a threat,
every day.
Every day. This is becoming a daily program for them. So I think, there is nothing cheaper and cowardice more than what happened last night. I've never seen anything like this. This is merciless. There is no mercy in what happened. There is no cause. There is no religion behind all this. This is just, act of barbarous. And there is no explanation for it. No political explanation, no religious explanation. We're dealing with a bunch of, fanatics. They have problems. I think from what we've heard from the guy who made the statement, he spoke with some American accent. Most of these people actually were brought up in the West. They might have had some Arab or Middle East origins, but when they went to the US or to Europe and they actually faced failure, they did not cope with the type of life and the culture, the Western culture. They came back to us with this, with these mentalities, and they're trying to use what they've achieved in the West: violence, aggression, and against us. We are their, native home. Yeah. So actually, we're going to face a lot of these acts in the future. This will not be the first or the last of these acts, because the war against terrorism will take some time. I claim that I know Libya very well, and I've been in and out of Libya since 1971, and I'm very happy to tell you that though Libya was ruled by a dictator, Muammar Gaddafi, but we had excellent relations with Gaddafi, and at that time we've cooperated with Gaddafi on all aspects, including military. We are very familiar with Libya and the military capabilities and the hideouts that are in Libya. I think our army will be able to score a lot of success, especially, you know, we've been studying the situation for the last 2 years. I mean, since even the earlier, chief of staff and the chief of army, Tantawi, we actually considered creating a safe haven to the Egyptians at those days. Remember when actually we got a lot of Egyptians out of Libya at one time in the beginning of the revolution there. And we have plans. And the only thing that stopped us is our friends in Europe and in the US. We thought they might consider our interference in Libya as an act of aggression. You know?
Because the NATO's interference in Libya was not an act of aggression, because they did not interfere themselves.
You see?
I don't really... But anyway, yes, every time Egypt responds, it's an interference in the domestic affairs. Ambassador Badr, as a diplomat yourself, how did you view the role played by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs?
I think it did what it could, certainly. We must really, quite frankly, study the situation under the following circumstances. Number one, we have closed our Consulate General in Benghazi since some time now. There's actually, as far as I know, no presence, consular that is, or probably something minimal. In Tripoli, the embassy is still there and it has been exposed to lots of troubles. Libya is a very large country and embassies normally deal with a government, with a central government, with which they can communicate, ask, receive answers, and transmit requests and so on and so forth. The situation in Libya is not like that. There is no a central government per se. We have got a faction, a strong faction, and another one in Barqa, the parliament, and there is a mediator from the United Nations who has been successful so far to hold one session, and there's a program for other sessions whereby the target is to form, hopefully, some sort of a joint ministerial body that can operate within, can run the affairs in Libya. This has not taken place as yet. Number two, Libya is a vast country. It's not a small country. So, in other words, amongst that sort of political chaos which exists, political vacuum, lack of central power, there are the tribes as well, there are these military factions fighting as well. So I'm sure the embassy did try all the forms of contacts it could contact with these different organs in the country to get whatever information they could. So,
but hence, I can raise here a point made by Engineer Shaaban, that what used to be Egypt's very much acquainted with the situation in Libya and Libyans themselves is totally changed, that we are dealing with a totally and completely different atmosphere, different people, different kind of ideologies, different kind of methods they are dealing by. I mean here, then we are dealing with a new, strange situation. Are we...
this is correct, and this really adds to what I have said, in the sense that, let me put it in the following terms. When history will be written about the period of Muammar Gaddafi, all right, he had full control of the country, he was a dictator, and he was ruling really a very strange system of organized anarchy. In other words, there was not really a political apparatus. There was not really a thing, a real army that could operate here and there. There were organs which were more or less symbolic, but were ultimately expressive of the will of the dictator or the ruler. Now, that whole thing collapsed. When it collapsed, anarchy appeared without any guise.
But
And
here
that's what we face.
I have to focus on the role of the Foreign Ministry in knowing the new facts on the ground. But before I go on with this, let me first have over the phone General Hamdi Bekhit, strategic analyst. Good evening to you, sir.
Good evening for you and your guest.
Yes, if they can just make something to the device because it's so low. But sir, we want to know from you the armed forces. And of course, we are saying that with all pride because it was a very quick reaction from our brave armed forces. How did you view such a quick reaction? What are we up to? What would be the next steps? Please.
The concerted airstrike that took place this dawn is expressing the high velocity and the high readiness of the armed forces and its knowledge about all the threats all over the area in the theater of war around the Arab Republic of Egypt. At the same time, we could depend on the information system and information analysis and information elements that's spreading all over the area, supporting the operation in the area of operation and the area of interest around the borders of the Arab Republic of Egypt. Same time, we can depend on the reconciliation that happened after this strike between the people and the president and the armed forces that could be hit through this criminal terrorist action that caused these casualties in 21 of our brothers of the Egyptian Christians. Same time, I would emphasize on the message that had been sent to all those who are imagining that they can hurt the national security of Egypt. Now you can know that we can reach you wherever and whenever. At the same time, I would appreciate the hasty mobilization and agility of the Air Force that made this strike after less than 6 hours from the speech given by the president last night. I would also emphasize on the armed forces and its capabilities to have this power and make this air strike on specific targets in Darna and other places, and the casualties that failed on this strike.
I would ask you to tell us the details about preparing for such quick attacks and response.
I don't hear you.
I'm telling you, sir, I would ask you to further elaborate on the quick response carried out by Egypt. I mean, here you said that the reaction was made just 6 hours.
I don't hear you well.
I'll try to speak as loud as possible. I'm asking you, sir, to further elaborate on the quick reaction taken by the armed forces, the very quick reaction taken by the armed forces. Just
that's what I told you. It was less. It was less than 6 hours.
Exactly. So what were the preparations made for such a quick response?
I expect more operation, but it's not a kind of emphasizing on the hasty reaction or the quick reaction. It depends on when and where we can choose our target. And I think this front has been opened to more operation, even more and wide operation. It's not depending on the Air Force only.
Yes.
We can use other forces. We can use the Navy. We can use the Special Forces. We can use many types of operation, especially the special operation.
No, I was really asking you, sir, about the preparations. How did you prepare for such a quick response?
I don't hear you well.
I'm asking, how did Egypt prepare for such a quick response? The preparations made with the Libyan authorities.
I don't hear.
Yes, I guess they will have to
I'm
fix
sorry,
that.
I don't hear you.
Yes. Yes, well, thank you very much, General Hamdi Bekhit, strategic analyst, for being with us. Hopefully they can fix this technically, but back to you, Engineer Shaaban. Yes.
Let me illustrate on this. Many moons ago, Libya regained control over two major air force bases in Tobruk, Al-Adn from the British government, as well as Wales, and they called it Uqba ibn Nafa, which is the American Air Force Base in Tripoli. The Egyptians are very familiar with all the Libyan installations and air bases. I think, being very familiar with these locations, I think we're going to have to cooperate with our neighbors from the West, Algeria, and we're going to have a launching pad in Libya itself. We're going to have a base like Tobruk, liberated from Daesh with the assistance of the General Haftar's troops as the ground troops to secure the base for our Air Force to use it to take off from within Libya, because this will eliminate the problem of the distance. You see, Libya have a problem with the maintenance of their Mirages and with their air forces that they've been buying from France for so long. You know, during the war, they destroyed a lot of their equipment, as well as no maintenance. So I think we need to activate the Arab League role. If the Libyan government will ask for our help, we could join forces. They can provide us with the ground forces, and we could actually block their shores actually from the Mediterranean side, because this is where they get their supplies. Okay? But we need to secure a location in Libya to allow our Air Force to use it to try to launch a successful war against terrorism. Other than that, we're going to be like what the Americans are doing in Syria and Iraq. They just hit and run, and we need to actually achieve things on the ground. We need to achieve things on the ground. We need to work with the Libyans. General Haftar is a very capable army. He's a good soldier. He's been fighting in Chad for so long, and he's got good experience. And we could work hand in hand with General Haftar. We need to liberate Libya. Let me put it this way. If we're going to just stop taking vendetta for our people, this is not enough. We need to liberate Libya and stop the interference of countries like Qatar and Turkey in Libya. We need once and for all. If we stop what's happening in Libya, and it is a lot easier because Libya, most of it is desert. And we actually know, like in Derna, they had big camps, training camps. And in Sabha, they have big training camps. And, you know, around Tripoli, they infiltrated in the city. This is the problem. But other than that, Libya is very large, and I find it very funny when Qatar claims that our Air Force actually had a lot of casualties from children and women. They claim that, by the way. And I find it very funny.
I really don't take what Qatar is saying
Well,
into
this
consideration.
is ironic, actually. This is ironic. I mean, we need to have a major operation to restore our dignity and to have a rebirth as a regional force.
Right. Back to diplomacy. And last year, there was this formation of the so-called the International Coalition Against Terrorism, in which Egypt said it would share with intelligence, share with information, share with whatsoever, but would not really get into it. But the so-called Coalition Against Terrorism, what happened so far?
It's a very good question. Probably at that juncture important to discuss that, because I'm sure there are lots of ideas, including what Engineer Shaaban had just mentioned, suggested about the base, etc., etc. All right. If I look into strategy in a general way, I would say that the center is this country, Egypt, which has to be protected, which has really to get back to its full power, and that's not an easy job economically, politically, in terms of development, etc., facing lots of problems that we have. And at that period, we are really approaching an important step in internal Egyptian history. If we talk about the economic conference, if we talk about the elections, etc., etc. Now, when it comes to national security, while it is important really to not omit any idea that can have really that priority and take the initiative instead of waiting and reacting, it is equally important to count our own capability, and I think personally probably to avoid opening a second front, second big front before Egypt at a time when we are facing in the homeland other gangs that are working in Sinai that have external connections as well, and not to be tempted or dragged to another white front whereby that can really jeopardize our best national interests. To come to your question, this is closely related with the question, because we declared we are going to cooperate with all the efforts to fight terrorism. Okay, that's a principle. Two, but we have not identified probably, or at least publicly, the scope within we are going to move. We can expect that there is intimate cooperation in exchange of information. Very intimate information concerning movements of troops, of persons, etc., etc. Probably that might also go to other dimensions, like training the internal forces in the state of Libya, for instance. It is quite important that Egypt cooperates in training the Libyan new army, helping the army to stand, helping the army to build itself, to build its capabilities on a new basis, which has inside the welfare of Libya and safeguarding Libya itself. That's a role we should start without hesitation right now. To come back to your question, the whole thing should be tailored without a fuss that some people might expect around our national capabilities and the priority of our national security. So, having said that, for instance, I do not think that Egypt should go and fight Daesh in Iraq or in Syria. Personally, I don't think that's a decision that could be taken, and certainly I don't think there are any symptoms that such a decision has been taken. But because that springs from the central idea, which I've just quoted about the national Egyptian safeguarding it. Now, in terms of diplomacy, a lot can be done. Because let me say that while diplomacy, with its tools,
But I'm truly
yes,
asking you not about what our diplomacy or our national security can do, but rather, do you really believe that there was a sincere or a real action from the so-called coalition against terrorism made so far? A serious action?
all right. Permit me to tell you something which happened very recently. I told you I just came from the States, and it so happened I heard Obama, while he was addressing the Congress, to formulate his strategy in fighting Daesh. Because one of the main stories was, well, the United States does not have a strategy, and probably that was right. It was hitting back certain experts, but nothing was concretized in a way which could be convincing to the population or to the institution, the state. Now, Obama is stressing on the following, that we are going to send more experts. He wants to avoid fighting on the ground. And he said, quote unquote, that he leaves it to the new president in the coming year, after the elections in the coming year, to decide upon developments in that area. In other words, that shows you that what has taken place so far was a reaction which was tied up, because we know quite well that in the image which the Western Alliance or the alliance showed on the ground, yes, airstrikes are useful. Airstrikes cause havoc, cause casualties, destroy ammunition, destroy other places where the enemy concentrates. But any battle is decided on the ground. That's a golden rule. All the military people know it. So the airstrikes help in such a way, the ground forces help in another. Once more, to go back to the strategy